Archangel Chronicles 2, Chapter 5, Death Maiden. Copyright 2024 by Raymond Kaliope, all rights reserved. We sat warming ourselves by the fire that night. For long hours we spoke, listening to the stories of the monk, the caravan master, and the green-eyed girl. It was very dark, and the narrowest silver sliver of a moon hung in the sky. The stars shimmered overhead, and the crackling fire illuminated the four travelers as each took their turn telling their stories to the queen of the Eschate. Heraeus was the first to speak. "You have us in your power, O Queen of Scythians. Will you keep our gold and slit our throats? Will you make our skulls into your drinking cups and take the girl for your cupbearer? For your people are long known to those who dwell in these lands. You Scythians, raid our cities and take what you can carry back to your kurgans, just like the Yuezhi. And who are you, caravan master? Persian, Greek, or you do come from the Indus, or perhaps further to the east, from the land of Quinn?" Said Arsalian. "Heraeus came to us as a little boy, and was raised by those of my order, my lord prince." These were the very first words the monk had spoken. "He came to us as an orphan of war. He goes by many names, and has been to many lands. He is our eyes and ears and protector." The monk looked at Heraeus and nodded. "I discern, my good and faithful companion and protector, that we are amongst friends." He turned to Axia and bowed. His face was a mask. He wore a serene, never-changing expression. His lips curved ever so slightly into half a smile. He exuded peace and calmness. "How does it come to pass that a queen of Scythia finds herself in lands so far from your home?" he asked. "We followed a star priest," said Axia. "Or at least we were following it for many days, until we came to this place. But the light has left us, and we have lost our way." "Ah, that light," nodded the monk thoughtfully. "Yes, that light. We know of this. It has been foretold amongst the ancestors of my order for endless ages past, and written in holy places, and whispered about in halls of great learning." "Have you seen it, priest?" said Arsalian. "No, but it will return. You were fated to be brought here to wait until we joined you. It shall return. You will see." "When?" I asked. "Soon," came the reply. "How do you know?" "A diva came to me." "What is a diva?" "He is a kind of celestial being." "Where did this being come to you?" I asked, trying to hide my growing excitement. "While I meditated alone." "Can you describe him?" "He was clothed in a gray hooded robe. He appeared to be a young man, with hair the color of gold, his skin the color of white satin." "Did this being tell you his name?" Yes, he said it was Raphael. He told me you would be coming, and that you would know him. The monk turned to Heraeus. You may rest, faithful friend. You have done well. We are where we are supposed to be. Heraeus frowned. Perhaps you could explain these things to us, priest, for we have come very far, and our journey must continue on the morrow. The monk took a deep breath of the cool night air. He raised his eyes, looking at the sliver of a moon and the arc of stars above us. He closed his eyes for a long time and sat in silence. He then turned his face back towards the queen. This is a long tale, O Queen of Scythia. It begins many ages ago, when the armies of the great king of Macedon came to Bactria, Gandhara, and the lands of the Indus. His armies vanquished all before them. This Alexander built great cities in Bactria and Gandhara, and in the great passes through the Hindu Kush. These places he settled with his veterans and other Greeks. He named these cities after himself: Alexandria Eschate, Alexandria Eschate, Alexandria Eschate, Alexandria in the Caucasus, which sits astride the great pass through the Hindu Kush. The great king's empire stretched from the inland sea of the Greeks across all of Asia and through Central Asia past the Hindu Kush right into the green lands of the Indus. But it did not long survive his death. His generals carved it up, Ptolemy taking Egypt, Seleucus taking all of Asia from Asia Minor to here. The easternmost parts of Seleucus' kingdoms were lost in wars with Chandragupta Maurya. His successor, Ashoka the Great, the Enlightened One, adopted the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, the Awakened One, the Buddha, for whom my order descended. But in time, the Macedonian generals fought among themselves, and in the end, all of Bactria and all of Gandhara passed away into a kingdom ruled by Menander, a descendant of the Greek colonists. The Greeks brought their language, their art, laws, and culture here and planted them in a fertile garden. Their influence and numbers took root. In the great riverlands, their descendants bloomed and flourished. Their cities prospered and grew very rich. There was much trade and commerce through these lands to places further east and west, and new ideas grew amongst their populations. The Greeks of Gandhara adopted the Buddha's ways, and their kingdoms flourished in Bactria and Gandhara and all the way to Taxila. As their cities grew wealthy and ever more prosperous, the Greeks established great seats of learning there. Under their rule, my order established many, many monasteries, and our followers grew in number, for our ways are peaceful, and we seek enlightenment. But great wealth and power in this world of attachments begets envy and greed. The wealthy and prosperity of the cities drew the attention of the Yuezhi people from the steppes far to the east near Karakoram and Tarim. These nomads saw the wealth of the Indo-Greeks and the peaceful ways of their cities. They came in large numbers. They lay siege to them and despoiled them. One by one, the cities of Alexander fell. The Yuezhi slaughtered all who would not submit. The Yuezhi came to these lands and fought the Sakas, your kinsmen, and drove them further south. All this I tell you, brothers and sister travelers, so that you may understand what comes next. As the Yuezhi settled into the Greek cities of Bactria, they adopted Greek customs and their Greek dress and language and ways of governing. They struck coins and ruled the people of their conquered cities and became rich. There is now a tyrant who calls himself Heraeus. The Yuezhi began to call themselves the Kushans. Heraeus killed his rivals and imposed his rule amongst all of these people. The last of the Indo-Greek kings on this side of the Hindu Kush was Heraeus Soter, the savior. He was a wise king, just and far-seeing, but his realm was reduced by the Kushans to the last of the great Greek kingdoms, the territory of Peripsamide, which stretches into the Hindu Kush through the great Khyber Pass. The Kushans, like many of the steppe peoples before them, bury their dead kings in kurgans. These tombs are raised higher than the surrounding lands. Inside these mounds they bury their dead kings with their retinues, their horses, precious objects, and servants. They believe that these will serve them in the afterlife. Legend has it that there was a woman who was descended from a child, a girl of Roxana, last wife of Alexander, king of Macedon. She was hidden away at his death, while his mother and generals squabbled over control of the empire. They took her to the furthest city of the empire, bearing his name, and raised her in secret. She married into the Greek houses that ruled Bactria and Gandhara. For generations they were daughters with copper-colored hair and blue-green eyes of the finest agate. The second last of these women was a great beauty and took on the name of Kaliope. She enchanted the last of the Bactrian Greek kings, Heraeus Soter, who fell in love with her and made her his queen. Then there was a daughter, Loukia, child of light, born from this union. Heraeus and Kaliope were very happy. They bestowed all of their love and goodness into this girl. Loukia was indeed a child of light. She played upon the lush foothills of the Hindu Kush in the springtime, gathering flowers and enchanting all who met her. She was a child of immense beauty, and like her ancestors, her eyes were the color of the most exquisite blue-green jewels. All who saw her loved and cherished her. But alas, although Loukia grew up in the most sheltered of places, playing in the green hills and oases along the banks of the great river, her peace was fated to be shattered, and at a time of great sorrow would descend upon her. The Kushans had been subjugating the Greek cities of Bactria. One by one, the Greek cities fell. Finally, they arrived at the gates of Alexandria Eschate, and their Kushan tyrant, Heraeus, determined to take the city with a vast army. For many months the siege lasted, but at last the citadel and its palace were taken. Heraeus was slain, and Queen Kaliope was enslaved. Heraeus forced her to become his concubine. Kaliope endured her fate, while the earth and sky groaned with cries of agony. Loukia was torn away forever from her mother and given over to the women of the Kushan court to be raised as a follower, a mere ornament, and a reminder to all of the power of the Kushans. She entertained the women of the tyrant's court with her skill on the lyre, and songs and poems and myths, singing to them of a homeland far away, fading into memory. One day, Loukia was singing in the secret garden. She sang the sorrowful song of Persephone and how the god of the underworld, Hades, came to take possession of her and take her to the underworld. Heraeus was walking amongst the flowers and ferns, dripping with the morning mists, when he heard her sweet voice rising over the treetops. Loukia's voice penetrated to the heart of this rugged warrior with the elongated skull and fierce countenance. The words of the song voiced all the deep sorrow and longing of this lonely maiden who was so cruelly taken from her own mother. The monk gestured to the girl. "Come here, child, and sing us that song." Loukia stood and came before the queen. She looked at the monk, who nodded gently. Then she looked to Targitus, standing with his eagle. His eyes caught and held her gaze. Targitus was transfixed. She sang to him, her sweet, clear voice piercing the night. "Sing to Demeter, O holy goddess with the beautiful hair. Sing of her daughter Persephone, child of sunlight. She of the delicate ankles, swift of foot, slipping over green hills and through morning mists, naming flowers, roses, crocuses, and violets blue, iris, hyacinths, and narcissus white, bloom to lure the flower-faced girl. And sing of Hades, mighty lord of the underworld, who spied this maiden full of color and fresh-faced light, who dwelt in darkness and desired light. And so he came from earth's deep gallery, driving his immortal horsed chariot, and seized this girl in his dark embrace. Cried out she did over all the earth, to the immortal gods, to her father Zeus, son of Cronos, highest and best. But neither immortals nor lesser men heard her cries, and so she descended into the underworld, to sing to Hades' many guests, to remind them of forgotten sunlight and flowers fair, and all shades below wept and sighed o'er what seemed lost. When she was finished, she looked back to the monk, tears streaming down her cheeks. He nodded gently to the girl, and she bowed, averted her eyes, and was still. There was utter silence. Our company was enchanted, transported, and moved. Targitus, in particular, could not take his eyes off this girl. The monk looked to the queen and resumed his story. That song was interrupted by the tyrant, coming upon the girl sitting with her lyre, surrounded by the women of the court. "What is this you sing, child?" he said. At his words, the women bowed and discreetly melted away. Loukia raised her eyes to Heraeus, towering above her like a god, but she was not afraid. There was a long silence. She demurely lowered her gaze and bowed her head. "I think of my mother as I sing this song," she said. The tyrant was shaken by the charm, the innocence, and the beauty of this child of light, just as I see you have been as well. But Heraeus was cruel, and hid from her knowledge that her mother was still alive, a concubine amongst the women of his court. Alas, even the mighty have their fates. The life of a tyrant is not a joyful one. Heraeus was consumed with expressing his power and consumed by the intrigue that goes with it. His realm was large, and governing it required the mixed application of ruthlessness, fear, and flattery. He was always on guard lest he be displaced by another ambitious underling. Heraeus grew tired of this at times. His innermost self was troubled by what he had done. He was racked with headaches and found his only solace was to lie in a darkened room. He summoned Loukia at these times, and she would strum her lyre and sing sweet songs and poems to him. This alone soothed him. The child seemed to touch something deep inside him and appealed to his better nature, buried so deep behind the mask of power. Heraeus, of the fearful countenance, who was a fierce warrior, ruthless in battle, could not live his life forever. His karma was to be smitten by the smallest of creatures, a tiny insect of some sort, perhaps a spider. He never knew the source of his doom, for it happened in his sleep. He was stung by this tiny and unknown creature, lying amongst his bedsheets one night in the summer. A slight pain in his side woke him up. He summoned his servants to inspect his body, but all there was to be seen was a small red pimple, welt, and a circle of red surrounding it. At first, he thought little about this minor thing, and he went about his usual business, wielding power, destroying enemies, and subjugating all in his path. But slowly, day after day, this minor wound grew painful. A boil appeared, became inflamed, and erupted with pus. The skin on his flank was hot to the touch. Before long, an inspection of the wound revealed tentacles of red spreading to the surrounding flesh. Before long, what was a mere irritant became intolerable. He could not stand the feel of cloth, even silk, brushing the wound. Before long, he could not wear his armor, and not long after that, he could not sit upright in the saddle. Each day, he grew weaker. He could find no relief in sleep, for in the quiet of the night, he was awakened and tortured by nameless terrors. His bedclothes soaked in sweat. Fever racked his body. All the best physicians from far and wide were brought to his bedside. One by one, they tried their potions and cures, but to no avail. Slowly, Heraeus approached his end, and nothing could stem the march of this evil disease. In all his empire, there was but one thing that could bring him relief from his suffering, at least for a while. It was the sweet sound of Loukia's singing in his garden. For it was the sound of her voice that brought him out of the darkness of the day's suffering. He could close his eyes and find peace. Heraeus knew that his time in this world was growing short. And so it came to pass that one day he summoned his eldest son and heir, Kujula Kadphisis, to his bedside. The Kushans, like all the nomads of the steppe lands, bury their dead under raised mounds, interring them with their needs for the afterlife in accordance with the attachments of their lifetimes, for they were not followers of the Buddha. Heraeus made his son Kujula swear to the gods to build such a mound with a stone chamber at its center. He ordered that 100 of the best and fastest horses in his kingdom and 100 of his faithful servants be brought there and ritually sacrificed to be interred with him on his death. A banquet table was laid out with stores of food, and the finest wines were in the innermost chamber surrounding his sarcophagus. Having given his son these commands, he grasped his arms, his fingers tightening like a vise around Kujula's wrists, his face glistening with sweat. his eyes wide open, his voice trembling with emotion, and he spoke to Kujula in desperation. "There's one further command, my son. This is the most important one. You must bring the copper-haired maiden Loukia to my death chamber with her lyre." He fell back on his bed, gasping for air. "She must be there singing to me, bringing light forever into that dark place. She will bring peace, beauty, and light to me in the afterlife." Heraeus grabbed Kujula's sleeves and pulled himself up. Shallow breaths came quickly, and he shook uncontrollably, his eyes fixed on his son's face. "Make haste. Make all ready. Time is short." Heraeus fell back into his bed, falling into a delirious, fevered state. Kujula was shaken to the core by this request. He was conflicted, for he too had been smitten by the beauty and innocence of this copper-haired girl with the agate eyes. Her songs pierced his soul no less than his father's. Spending more and more time in her garden, he listened to her sweet voice. He watched her tending the exquisite flowers and plants in the hidden oases. But Kujula was a man of his word and had sworn sacred oaths to his dying father. Such oaths cannot be undone or dishonored. He steeled himself to sacrifice this beautiful girl and consign her in the dark tomb forever. He knew that if he failed in his sacred oath, his father would suffer eternal torment in the darkness, alone, forever. And so it was with great sorrow that Kujula summoned his servants to the tyrant's officers to give the orders. His men went to the hidden garden in the secret oasis to fetch the girl, but she had disappeared. The monk sat before the campfire. The flickering light cast moving shadows over the hollow of his eyes. All of this unfolded just before you arrived, my friends. For seers in my order foresaw the passing of the powers of the Greek kingdoms and the rise of new empires. Heraeus and his predecessors were benefactors to my order and our followers. We established great centers of learning and enlightenment in these kingdoms. Near the end, before the fall of the city, Heraeus entrusted the care and education of his daughter, Loukia, to us. In her secret garden, we attended to her after the city fell. We knew of the illness of Heraeus and where it would lead him. We learned that he would seek to take this girl of light with him to his grave. We have many eyes and ears within the city, and we knew the ways. And we had followers like Demetrius who told us about you. And so it was that the hours before Kujula swore fearful oaths to his father, we had brought Loukia away from her captivity in the secret oases and brought her here to you. Heraeus now spoke. He came forward, standing defiantly before the queen, fists clenched. "What will you do with us now, Queen of Scythians? Will you steal the last treasure of the lost city of Alexander and leave us wandering these empty plains without hope? Would you slay us and send us to the shadows below, forever removed from the sight of humankind? Or will you return us to the Kushans and doom this child to a death beneath the earth?" "I see no honor in any of those paths, caravan master," said Axia. She looked at the monk. "Tell me, holy man, what of the mother? Surely this tale does not end there. If you and your followers know the secret paths of those gardens and the hidden rooms and city and the palace, is there nothing you could do for her mother? I cannot bear to be told that she is lost to this child forever. No mother could rest without knowing her child is safe. A small smile appeared on his chubby face, and a twinkle of light gleamed in his eyes. He nodded and spoke again. You are just and wise, I see, O Queen of Scythia. No, the story does not end there. The child was saved. As for her mother, the monk raised his hand, and from the edge of the circle behind him came a figure wrapped in a black hooded cloak. This person stood before Axia, stopped, its face hidden in shadows. The monk gestured to Heraeus. He came forward, bowed to the hooded figure, then stepped behind it, raised his hands to the hood, and gently pulled it back. The firelight revealed a most handsome, mature woman of elegant and regal countenance. She had the same unmistakable blue-green eyes that glowed in the firelight, and the same braided, copper-colored hair streaked with white, falling like a rope, curving below her ear. She shed the dark cloak and stepped forward, clad in a silken emerald green gown that shimmered in the firelight. The girl ran to this figure and embraced her. Cries of sorrow, hope, and joy echoed through the night air. We all stood up in astonishment. The monk, squatting cross-legged at his seat, with that inscrutable look upon his face, now spoke. O Queen of Scythians, I give you Kaliope, the last queen of the lost city of Alexandria Eschate, released from bondage and reunited to her child of spring. Theron rushed forward and grasped the monk, pulling him to his feet. He placed his big hands upon the monk's cheeks and pulled him forward, planting a big kiss upon his forehead. The monk, uncomfortable with the attention, disengaged from Theron's embrace. Look here, laughed Theron in delight. You have a bit of showman in you, don't you? You should be in the theater. The monk closed his eyes, sat down again, and assumed a meditative posture, and said no more. We sat long into the night, discussing our situation. Loukia lay with her head on her mother's lap. Kaliope hung to her daughter, rocking back and forth, eyes closed, a look of quiet joy upon her face. Arcelian reached out and touched her gently on the shoulder. O Queen of Sorrows, we must make plans, for we must expect that this son of the tyrant Kujula will spare no effort to find you. We must leave this place on the morrow. Will you come with us? We will protect you, he said softly. Kaliope did not open her eyes. She kept humming gently to her child, rocking back and forth, and did not speak. Heraeus reached out to Arcelian, pulling him away from Kaliope and her daughter. He spoke in a low voice. Forgive me, my lord, for the words I spoke in fear. I see that I was wrong about you. You must know that she cannot answer you, for she is in a different place. She has suffered terrible sorrows and endured unspeakable acts. She is a brave spirit, but each of us has our limit. She has been silent for many months since we found her and took her away from her captivity. She has ceased to speak with the living. Axia kissed Loukia gently on the forehead. She opened her luminous eyes and sat up. Axius stroked her cheek. "Come, child, and speak for your mother. What would you have us do?" "We would go with you," she answered quietly. She looked at Targitus. "I will follow him and the eagle. We are on our way to Taxila, but the journey is long and dangerous. There are high passes, raging rivers, and deep snows between here and there. Does this not frighten you?" "Nay," she said sweetly. The monk spoke again. "There is one last free city of Alexander left, O Queen. It is Alexandria in the Caucasus, the city in the mountains, the last stronghold of the Greeks. They are kinsmen to the queen and princess. They will help you get to Taxila. It would be wisest for these two to go with you, for the Kushans have plans to besiege that city before long. They have suffered enough, and you will take them beyond Kujula's reach." "But what of you, Holy One? Will you join us?" I asked. The monk was silent for a time. He looked at me with great interest. "The one you called Raphael spoke to me about you, Adam from anywhere," he said softly. "You know my name," I said. "He told me that your heart's desire shall be found there. He told me that he will come again when it is time, and you shall find the light to guide you again. He said that the time of great enlightenment is close, but the journey will be long and difficult." He bowed slightly. I returned the gesture. "Thank you for all of this, O Holy One. Your words of great comfort to us. The way has not been lost. There are great libraries and monasteries at Taxila. It is a seat of great learning and antiquity for my order. There we will consult the seers and learned ones about the prophecies of these luminous beings. I will go with you, at least that far," said the monk. I turned to Axia. "I think this the way. It is no accident that these people have been put in our path." "So it shall be, Adam the Wise. We will make for Taxila, as you say, and meet its king." She rose and stretched. "But now I am weary and need to rest." Music for Chapter 5. The following from Epidemic Sound. The Odyssey Ahead by Dream Cave. A Hero Will Know by Bonnie Grace. Serene Journey by Palace on Wheels. Choirs of War by Dream Cave. Damien's Dream by Dream Tamer. Flight of the Ravens by Edgar Hop. Keep Asking Me by Francis Wells. May You Have by Bonnie Grace. Adoration by Spectacles, Wallet, and Watch. Invincible by Edgar Hop. Finnegan's Ruin by Alduant. Mind Tricks by Xperia. Guarded Skies by Edgar Hop. Godsend by Johannes Borloff. And from Ed Records, A New Quest. Archangel Chronicles 2 by Raymond Collodi. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved.